Hey everyone, hello there.
How's Hello. Good. You?
Well, I'm pretty good. Welcome to the mess we're in. Those watching, welcome to the people in the comments. We have had such an insane week that we thought it might be nice to bring Jo Bartosch on a little bit earlier so that she can comment on it, because she's across everything in this, and I think it would be enjoyable to get her input. You know, I mean, what do we have to talk about? We have to talk about Adele last night. What else? I mean, there's so much, like the prisons protest on Friday or Saturday. There's just so much going on that I'm sure we'll be able to fill out the hour.
You always manage to fill out the hour.
Faffing. My favorite thing is people when we meet people in real life and don't recognize them, and I'm Graham, and you know, how's it going, blah blah blah, and they go, yeah, really well. You interviewed me on the mess we're in. I just get, because you see so many people on monitors now, you know, it's hard to know how many of them you know for real or not. You know,
it's true.
Well, I mean, we only met for real the other day, didn't we? That was astonishing. Turns out you're massive.
Yeah. No, I'm a big one. I'm a unit, as the young people say. So anyway, listen, I just wanted to quickly get something out of the way. It's quite a tender subject, so I don't want to linger long on it, because it's the kind of tender subject that creates mini firestorms. But essentially, Exulancic's YouTube channel got taken down the other day, which was, I think, overall a huge loss, because Exulancic, probably since Magdalene Burns, is the first person to really explain the everything that's going on, and she does so, you know, in a really skilled way, with humor and compassion usually, and all the rest of it. There are, however, some certain things that have been happening recently in terms of how she has been discussing intersex conditions that people are very angry about, and I hope that those kinds of discussions will calm down so that we can actually discuss them, and not just go into the cycle of what happens on the internet, which is a kind of a cyclone of bad faith and anger. You know, now Tish says that Exulancic is back, and I did see that I saw a few videos going up on YouTube, so I was glad about that. But I just couldn't let it pass without saying that her stance on case women, which is an intersex condition, is you know, I happen to agree with some of the criticisms of it, but I don't want to go into that now. I'm just hoping that maybe we can start talking about these things, about some of the complexities here, without you know, setting fire to everything, you know, because I think, you know, some of the heat from that particular fire was used to ban Exulancic, very possibly, you know, and so, you know, there's just a lot to be said for working things out. But anyway, I'm that will probably get me murdered for the week, so that's all I wanted to say on it. And I'm delighted to have her back, but I must add that proviso that, you know, there are certain positions that she's holding at the moment which I know are very, very are objected to by a lot of intersex people that I know. But anyway, yes, Helen.
You know, and I think that's fair enough. And I do think that it's important to be able to say, actually, there's something that this person has said here I don't agree with, but you can still have reasonable discussions with them, or that you can say, however, you know, they've done good work in this area, which shouldn't be ignored, because, you know, we are fully rounded people. You know, I often disagree with some of the stuff that you say, but it doesn't mean that we can't have a decent, interesting chat on here where we sort of bring different perspectives in. I mean, I think that's okay.
And make progress on our shared goals. We don't have the same goals, you know. You may not love 80s music as much as I do, but I forgive you. You know.
What?
80s music.
80s music. Yes. Speaking of which, Adele, wasn't that nice?
Yeah. Somebody fill me in. I was watching an 80s movie last night, so I didn't get any news. I was watching Al Pacino in Cruising, which is a controversial gay movie.
Oh my God.
Controversial gay man. So fill me in on Adele. What happened to Adele while I was watching this controversial gay film?
Simply it was the Brit Awards. She won the award, as far as I can tell anyway. She won the award that they've now designated as sort of not just for women. And she said, thanks for this award. I can understand why they've changed the name, but I love being a woman. I just want to say I enjoy being a woman. I love being a woman.
Oh, it's good news. I'm so glad. I didn't know if it was going to be good or bad news.
But even better than that, she did a very political and very smart thing. She said, "I love being female. I love being a woman." I thought that was fantastic.
Oh, wow.
And of course, because
for Christ's sake, Adele, can you stop being so amazing? I mean, really.
But of course, because only men can now safely say they are women. Adele has already been the subject of, people calling for her to apologize and all that usual stuff. So this is someone who literally just said, "I love being female. I love being a woman," and they're trying to make her apologize. I do.
I think I'm a little bit wary about going too far on this one. I haven't seen that much that people have said about. I mean, I've seen one tweet going round and round and round, and and I have seen some sort of vague things, but on the whole, there isn't.
I think I've seen one
cheering anger. They might start. But,
I could be wrong, but I think there's been one news story about it, So maybe the news are just trying to make something out of nothing,
It's
somebody
possible.
will, though. I mean,
it's possible.
These activist kids have nothing better to do, so they're working something up right now. They'll show up at our house with trans flags at some point.
Well, let's see. Let's see. Anyway, I wanted to point out. Look at me behind me. I'm on the calendar. I'm on Birdie Rose's calendar. I'm so touched.
It's a calendar. I didn't know it was a calendar.
Yeah, look. I am Miss February. Which is now.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know it was a calendar. That's great.
I'm so touched. It's amazing.
It's just silly as her name would suggest.
J.K. Rowling is December.
Of course.
And then there's Joanna Cherry is on there. It's loads. Jess DeWalls is on there. It's such a lovely calendar. I'm so happy. Plus, she's put the word penis there, but it's not right by my mouth, so it looks like
that's always useful. I don't know.
Perfect.
Yeah. I was a little bit worried about that.
The world is such a great place with Birdie Rose in it. She's so delightful.
I'm sure we'll be hearing from more from her soon. But anyway, sorry. What was I going to say? Yes, the other thing I wanted to just briefly touch on is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is becoming more and more interesting as each day passes. It started with a kind of accusation that he was spreading COVID misinformation. Okay. But I don't think they give a damn about COVID. I think that's just a cover. I think the truth is that they really don't like Joe Rogan platforming people who, the kind of echo chamber on the left have all agreed are not the right people to be platforming. So he will speak to people like, Alex Jones and he will speak to figures on the left and the right. Politicians come by to speak to him, and comedians, lots of comedians. But what's interesting is that, they're really trying to take him down. And I read a brilliant piece about it that I posted on my blog. Someone told me it's from a right-wing magazine, but I don't care because it's very good. It's Tablet, and I think the piece is called The Gray.
Tablet? That's not a right-wing magazine. It's a Jewish magazine. I don't know. It might be a little bit conservative, but I think it's primarily Jewish.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Well, that's what I thought. When I saw Tablet, I thought that doesn't sound like Sturm von Travel Nazi name. I just thought that sounds like Slate or something. So anyway, I read it, and it's brilliant because it's talking about how it's not just women who have been affected by cancel culture and comedians like me and all sorts of different, or comic writers like me and comedians and all sorts of different people. But what's interesting, I just found out recently that I think it was on Andrew Doyle's show, someone mentioned it, that when they couldn't get him, they started to come after comedians he knows. So
Mm-hmm.
they've started to come after people who don't have his power and who don't have his platform. And they are finding old tweets and they're amplifying them. And this is a friend of Joe Rogan's and stuff. They also did the most extraordinary thing where they successfully, which I find extraordinary, successfully managed Spotify to take down something like 100 episodes where Rogan mentioned the N-word, but not in casual use. He wasn't using it. He was describing things that had happened. He was describing, for instance, racist comments of racist cops, etc. And so that's been painted as another. So now there's just this kind. I mean, if I hadn't looked into that, which most people don't, they would just go away thinking, "Oh, he's throwing the N-word around," you know?
Yeah, because there's just an army of activists who have nothing to do but to try to find something to get. The way that people participate in their community is to whip up a frenzy about something. And so the sort of level of what is offensive gets lower and lower and lower because everybody's trying to find something to share with their group. You know, so somebody went through Joe Rogan's episodes and found every instance of a reference to the N-word, not using it, you know, in itself, but referring to it and saying the word while referring to it, and then made like a supercut of it to make him look bad. And that was their way of participating in their community of activism and outrage, was to smear Joe Rogan as a racist for using this word. I think he's probably pretty controversial, pretty provocative in the way that he uses it, but it's always in reference to it. I don't think he's ever called anyone explicitly that.
It's interesting because honestly, I did think, because I had, you know, the vague stories that I'd heard, I had drawn the conclusion that he was in fact spreading COVID misinformation and that he was a racist.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And
I have heard pretty strong things that he is spreading COVID misinformation. Is that not true?
No, here's the thing. Basically, as he often points out, the stuff that he is saying on the show, they often say it like 6 months before it's said officially. The best example is the Wuhan leak business, because that was kind of dismissed as nonsense, and of course it turns out to be very probably true, you know. So like he's just and the other thing is I've been listening to his podcast recently because I wanted to make sure I got it right, and in fact I listened to a COVID one. I can't remember who he had on it, but he was very clear throughout, over and over again. He kept saying a variation of, you know, I'm just a dummy. I'm not a reliable source. I'm just, you know, he stresses that he is what he is, which is just, he's a podcast host who set up his podcast to chat with his comedy friends, found out that he was a very good interviewer, and got massively successfll. That's all he is. But they're acting like he's Alex Jones. They're acting like he's got some sort of agenda. And all his agenda is he talks to people. It's extraordinary. And
well, I think you make a really good point when you say that it's these people on the left who just don't like that he platforms a diversity of views. That's a very, very good point. And around COVID, I take COVID very seriously. I think people should be very careful around misinformation. So I'm very concerned when people spread rumors about ivermectin and bullshit and pseudoscience. But at the same time, you know, I think Joe Rogan's voice matters because it's the only one left practically on the entire internet where viewpoint diversity takes place. Some of it can be really, really gross, like Alex Jones, but at least it's being discussed. And there are a lot of people who just want, they don't like Alex Jones, but they don't want to live in a world where Alex Jones can't ever be spoken to or even to be confronted. You know, well, we have to have these voices so that we can confront them. This was the power of gay rights in the 80s and the 70s, is that we wanted our critics to have a platform so that we could challenge them. Whereas now it's about just take the platform away, you know. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
Helen, what were you going to say?
Well, I was wondering, I sort of got the impression that he wasn't actually platforming that diverse amount of views, that it was skewed quite heavily towards the anti-vaxxers, and that's what people were complaining about or objecting to. But you know, it's an interesting point that I do, and I do think that, you know, there is something to be said about, you want to actually hear people's arguments so that you can just say, you know, that's a bit shit, that's just rubbish, that's just a rubbish argument, and you can just answer it.
Jo is here, so she looks ready to go, as far as I could see.
I thought you meant Joe Rogan for a second.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, surprise!
Jo Bartosch.
Jo, how amazing!
Wow,
how amazing to have you on.
What a coup to get you on
here
while you're in the middle of this storm, Jo. No, I'm joking. Lovely to see you, Jo. Thank you very much for joining us. I thought I'd just bring you in quickly because as people who've been following this know, you are very much across everything in this debate and have been solidly for a good long time now. I'll go back to Joe Rogan's, but let's just make sure that people know who you are, Jo, before we go in. You're a journalist for a number of different publications: The Critic, Telegraph. I'm sure you've had many more bylines.
Unbelievably prolific. The unbelievably prolific Jo Bartosch. I can't believe how much you put out.
And it's always great to see you handling a subject because you do it so well and you explain it so well to people. But what I was curious about, the first thing that occurred to me is, when did you start thinking something is going on here? Can you trace back to that moment? Can you, and then was there another moment when you fully turved out, so to speak?
Yeah, so I used to run, so my interest in this, I was always interested in social justice campaigns, and I'd always considered myself on the left. And I used to run a feminist group. And for a fundraising event, I made a poster, and I've never really sort of paid any attention to pop culture. It was just a name that had appeared, and Caitlyn Jenner. And I made this poster saying, celebrating fabulous women from Emma Watson to Caitlyn Jenner. And so this is about 2015.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine sort of called me out on it. And my reaction, and I didn't even, I came out with the trans women are women mantra without even thinking about it.
Yes.
And then burst into tears at the slightest challenge. And I'm not a particularly, emotional, gushy person. So I thought about it, and I thought about my reaction, and I realised that it was, her opinion was essentially something I'd held up until only a couple of years previously. And then I met with her with the intention of talking her round, and realised that what I'd understood as an oppressive gender stereotype was essentially the basis of people's identities, and that it was a load of bollocks. and then it's so bloody obvious when you spell it out. And then I just couldn't shut up about it, really, because I just felt really...
Then you couldn't stop.
No, I just felt really, really cross that something so sexist had just been allowed to filter through, and I was really angry with myself for unwittingly getting drawn into it. So yeah, that was it, really.
Yeah. And then what was the first, do you remember the first time you started getting pushback for your position, and has it had any repercussions outside of your increased writing on the subject?
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of ironic thing, is I feel a bit guilty in a way, because I've got all these women in particular being cancelled and losing their jobs or having to be, quiet at work. And I've kind of made my career from speaking out. Yeah. So it's kind of a bit, I feel a bit guilty in a way. But I mean, I've always been used to having controversial opinions, so it's just another one to add. I wasn't really too bothered. I mean, I have lost quite a few friends, and I look back at photos from my civil partnership, and there are quite a few friends there who no longer speak to me, and it has, there are pubs that I can't go to anymore in my local town, and it has had an impact. But
that's quite an astonishing thing to just say casually, though. There are pubs in my local town that I can no longer go to. I mean, when you actually look at that as a cold statement, it's quite, I'm going to say, it's quite astonishing. It's incredible, actually. And we're so used to it now that we're just saying it. But when you look at it objectively, this is a ridiculous thing. that because of this view that you have that women should in fact be able to have their single sex spaces and their language, that are pubs that you are unwelcoming.
I mean, it is bonkers. And
yeah,
it's bonkers
every day. I can't believe it. I think you have the same curse that we have. It's just like we can't stop talking about this and thinking about it, because it is truly the most important thing that's going on right now. And it's driving us mad because the world isn't seeing it. And I, too, cannot go to some of my local bars that I used to go to. Because they're gay bars, it's ground zero for this stuff. Yeah, it's really astonishing. It really is astonishing.
Jo, what were you going to say to that?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I mean, I've held some absolutely bloody ludicrous opinions in the past, which have never had me cancelled.
Yeah. Well, I always say to people, I was on Twitter from 2007 or thereabouts, and I can't be sure of anything that I said on Twitter except when I started talking about this. This is the only thing that I'm 100% sure I was completely right on. Everything before that, I now wonder, like we've just been talking about the way that Joe Rogan is being portrayed as a COVID anti-vaxxer and all this sort of stuff. And I mean, a hilarious thing, just to go back to this for a second, is that what happened, of course, was that Trevor Noah came out and attacked him. Trevor Noah is the host of the Daily Show at the moment. And Trevor Noah called him whatever he called him. And what Joe Rogan's fans did was they went through old Trevor Noah tweets and found references to Jews and women and so on. And now Trevor Noah is apologizing for his jokes. So it's an extraordinary situation where everything is just spiraling down. But I genuinely think that I do think that the big project at the moment, I feel, and I wonder whether this is just because some variation of that thing, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But I wonder if the real reason Joe Rogan is being attacked is because he platformed Meghan Murphy, and he platformed Deborah Sow, and he platformed Abigail Schreier. And these, I think of all the things that are going on at the moment, the transgender experiment is the one where they really circle the wagons around it. Would you say that might be true, or am I being paranoid?
I don't know. I mean, certainly I think it takes so much effort to sustain a lie, and a lie that big, that I can see the slightest challenge provokes a quite disproportionate reaction. I think because essentially they know that it's absolute nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
I will be
the
cautious.
Religion formula. The more false something is, the more you have to front, and the more angry you have to get at the challenges to it. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I when you're sort of so far into the issue, and it is one of those things that's sort of all consuming, I think sometimes it's really hard to be objective, to take a step back, and to. So I'm not sure.
I mean, I'd be slightly wary, Graham, about saying, sometimes a pipe is just a pipe, and it is possible that people are cancelling Joe Rogan because of what he has actually said. I am wary of saying but there's this transphobic dog whistles, and so this is what people are actually saying.
No, sure, absolutely.
I mean, I'm slightly wary.
Let me back up my theory then with one thing, which is the reaction to Adele. The reaction to Adele's comment. Now, we've been talking about whether it might be overwrought, but there's definitely some chatter about her being a TERF, and I believe there's some piece out there about it. Maybe I jumped the gun. Maybe other people will tell me if there's chatter about it. But the fact that it's controversial for me to say I'm a female, I'm a woman, I'm proud to be a female, proud to be a woman. The fact that is controversial to say. You've got to admit that's a kind of victory for the trans movement. They've made being a woman problematic.
Mm-hmm.
It is, but at the same time, it's a PR victory for us, because the more they sort of throw their toys out the pram about perfectly ordinary statements and telling the truth, the more bloody ridiculous they look.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that is a fun part of it. Jo, have you seen? You're gay yourself. Have you seen? Oh, sorry, I thought I got that right. Have I got that right?
Bisexual, but
bisexual. Yeah. Excuse me, Jo. Sorry.
That counts.
But have you seen firsthand the effect that gender ideology has had on lesbian spaces? I was going to say specifically. What have you seen? Like on the kind of what is it like on ground zero for lesbians at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, my partner's a lesbian, and I mean, going back to again the sort of local things that I don't feel able to take part in. I certainly wouldn't go to my local Pride March. It's been taken over by polyamorous people, human pups, and men in frocks. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think. I mean, I've never really been much of a one for sort of community stuff anyway, but it is isolating. And I mean, I guess, you know, you get morons of all sexualities. So I think sometimes there's a tendency within the gender critical movement to think that, well, of course lesbians are going to get this, but actually if you're in a relationship like Nancy Kelly and you're not going to go on her dating app or whatever, of course you wouldn't know. And I think it's you know, it's your instinct, if you like, is to side with the group that you think's having a hard time. And you know, there's so much propaganda around it, particularly that I can see it's really tough, particularly for young women. I mean, the other thing is that already, I mean, I think lesbians in particular, and I don't want to speak for them or appropriate their experience, but existing in a society where essentially you're at the bottom of the heap because you don't fancy men.
You have a double discrimination, being a woman and being a same-sex attracted person.
Yeah. So I think they're really, really easy to marginalize, and it's pretty shit.
And I feel like there's a real irony in that a lot of same-sex attracted women, bisexual or lesbian, also can experience a lot of dysphoria, which can incline them, I think, to be sympathetic to people who are claiming to have dysphoria. So there's an irony that a lot of these men who are trying to appropriate the lesbian identity are being empathized with by lesbians because they think that they have a similar condition to themselves, you know? Yeah.
Helen,
I think we've said this before, but I think one of the most successful pieces of propaganda that has come out of the trans movement is that this is homophobia 2.0. I mean, I think they've done really well there, you know, in getting their message across. It is not true, and you only have to look at it critically for quite a short amount of time to realize that this is true. But not everyone wants to bother, because it's actually much easier, isn't it, if somebody says to you, look, this is the problem. And especially politicians, I think, you know, who have to read a huge amount of material. They have to make decisions on all sorts of things, how they're going to vote. Somebody says to you, look, this is homophobia 2.0. They can say, okay, yeah, got it. That's fine. And move on. So it has been clever. And this is one of the things that, you know, I think is one of the hardest things to break through, actually. You know, you see the arguments all of the time.
They love that it's homophobia 2.0 because then they can correct their own history, because they fucked up homophobia 1.0, all these straight people, and they want to pretend that they didn't. So they're like, oh, it's my chance to my redo, right? And then like the cops and the Tories are running headlong into trans activism because it's their idea, their way of cleansing their history of being monstrously homophobic. Nice. No offense to our Tory fans, but you know, the Conservative Party in the UK and Canada and the Republicans in the United States were horrible to gays, and they're trying to correct it. You know,
let me use that. Oh, sorry, Joe. Were you going to disagree?
No, I was going to say I don't think the unions were all that cuddly either.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true.
I think also that we really. I mean, it seems to me clearer and clearer we're moving beyond the left-right type of world. I mean, some of the most impressive, you know, politicians on this have been lesbians who are on right, you know. It's there's been like Lydia Doyle Price and people like that, you know. It just seems to me, and especially with Joe Rogan, again, sorry to come back to him, but I do think it's an interesting this encapsulates the whole thing. Like, let me tell you what this piece said that I shared today, called the Blue Stack. It says that there is an attempt at the moment to punish people who are, because of the internet, reaching these higher audiences. not just by punishing, but by removing their ability to make a living. Now, obviously, that's interesting to me because it's happening mostly, I think, to women. I think it's happening more to so-called TERFs than anyone else. You know, it's like as a group, I think they're being cancelled far more than any other group. You know what I mean? So, like, I just don't know, and I don't know how you feel on this, Jo, but I just don't feel that the old paradigm of right versus left is working anymore.
No, I don't think it has for a long time. I mean, I'm horrified to see how censorious and authoritarian the left has become, and it's actually making me question my own opinions. I mean, has it always been like that? Did I just not notice? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, agreed.
That's what I meant when I said I'm totally behind everything I did on Twitter, but only after I became, interested in this particular fight.
Because then you have to look up every single view you have and evaluate it on your own instead of just going with your group. You know, when you have a group, they hand you a package like these are your views on everything from abortion to whatever, and you're just like, I'm in my group, I have my package. This is the leftist views on everything. And then when you realize one of them is just completely batshit crazy, you have to go through each and every single thing.
I think that's fair. Yeah. I also, for me, it was also how working out a different way to argue. Some of the tactics that I would use in the past, maybe sort of arguing from authority, saying, well, I'm a woman, so I can, you can't actually challenge me on this. And I see it coming in spades from the other side now. Don't challenge. You can't actually argue this point. You don't need to. It's too. Why would you even question that? I wouldn't do any of that anymore. But actually, having done it myself, maybe in the past, I think has equipped me with better tools to be able to see it now and then say, actually, this is how you counter this. And actually, I was wrong. I was wrong to use these tactics. I think it's made me. Better at reevaluating. How I think. So I judge everyone
now by what they say to me at that moment, if that makes sense. I don't care about what they may have said in the past or what they may. I feel like one thing we might think about doing is an amnesty for opinions. Like we just say to everyone, we're just having a ground zero on opinions, okay? Whatever shitty opinion you had before, your slate is wiped clean. And now let's go. Let's go. You know what I mean?
In the past, your opinions weren't logged online and recorded, so you could change. Your opinions could shift, and everyone would just
like somebody deleting their Twitter history.
Yeah,
like because someone's threatened to sue them.
But Jo, you don't really get involved in these kind of back and forths online. You everything goes through your pieces, really, as far as I can see. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, I want to keep my account, to be honst. I don't find it. I think the way social media is set up is, I feel it is designed to exacerbate misunderstandings. So I think, to be honest, it's not particularly useful medium for changing people's minds. I tend to use it for networking rather than sort of challenging people because. I just don't think it's effective.
And I think that's extremely sensible. Actually, it's not necessarily a strategy that I have chosen, but it is a very sensible one. And it means that your energy is focused on actually writing pieces for papers where they reach far, far more people who are not in a sort of Twitter bubble. Now, I do think there is room for people like me who pretty much just engage in the arguments online. I think I certainly have found that it's allowed me to clarify my thoughts and also maybe to expose some of the worst arguments and try and get those out there. But I do think that some of your pieces, they've just been groundbreaking and brilliant. They've just got the message out there. I mean, it's been super.
Well, can I just say that you both have different things for me. I like the fact that you go after them, Helena, and expose them, and I like the fact that you do that in a more formal way, Jo. Jo, can I ask, you're from your kind of position, contributing stuff to all these different publications. Do you think there's a change in mood? Like we're always grasping for it, we're always hoping for it. Do you think that people might be grasping what's going on?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because I wanted to ask that, and I just want to maybe add to that question. What you're writing for so many different outlets. Are you seeing outlets on the left starting to shift? But yeah, can you tell us about what it's like?
So, for years and years and years, I was writing. So as soon as this clicked, I started writing on it. And to start with, actually, to their credit, one of the first papers that that published was the Morning Star.
They've been good.
That's right.
I think they then got a bit of pressure from the unions and don't look at the issue so much anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
They had some great pieces. Yeah.
They did. Yeah. And then I kept pushing, and I was sort of being dismissed, and people thought I was nuts. I think actually the real moment that made me realize how terrifying this was in 2017 when I had a piece in the Independent, and I was asked to change it 2 weeks later. After somebody got in touch with me, and I told them to bugger off, obviously, but they haven't published me since. And then I started to get picked up by Spiked and sort of quite a few writer-centered publications. The past sort of year has been insane. I just haven't had time to breathe.
Yeah,
you're so prolific. It's astonishing.
Well, interestingly, over the past couple of months, actually things have quietened down, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's because staffers are starting to pick up articles. So staffers who. So I think that the niche that I found was basically because mainstream journalists weren't touching it. So they'd sort of commission freelancers who would go there, and now I think in a way it's a really good sign that it is becoming. Has become a mainstream issue, but obviously the flip side is I've got a bit less work.
Well, I think a good thing about that is it allows us all to relax a little bit and do the stuff we want to do. I mean, none of us want to be in this fucking stupid fight. No, it's absolutely absurd that we have to argue that women really exist and that children shouldn't have to take fucking.
It is quite absurd.
It's absurd. It's a waste of all our time.
Is there maybe a book in there, Jo? Is there some books
potentially?
That's good news. That'll do for me. There was something else I was going to ask about. Sorry, someone put it in the thing. Oh yes, can we talk a little bit about Ellen Page? Another kind of aspect that I'm sure you're across. I got into a bit of trouble recently because I said that a photograph that Page posted was Karen Carpenter. If Karen Carpenter had Instagram, which was sorry.
Karen Carpenter was a singer, and she was the first famous person to have anorexia. And she actually started anorexia, so to speak. It was when a celebrity got anorexia. It was when the phenomenon of anorexia became a social contagion, and it continues to this day. So she was sort of patient zero for anorexia.
Yeah, she died from it, didn't she?
That's right. Yeah.
And I published a piece today, a thread by someone on Twitter who was talking about how merely mentioning the existence of bulimia made bulimia rocket up.
Was it bulimia? I thought it was. I'm sorry, eating disorder.
I thought they were related. I thought they were more or less.
They're related, but they're not the same. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay.
I think she died of anorexia, though, but I'm not.
But the thing about it is that the similar thing has happened, of course, with gender ideology. As more people find out about transitioning, demands for transitioning just went way up. So that was my point, that this is anorexia 2.0 or anorexia with a better marketing budget. Like it's one of the problems we have, Jo, quite apart from people just not believing us most of the time, is that the images and the stories are so shocking and disturbing. I also have I also work with Genevieve Gluck, who I'm sure you know, Jo.
She's excellent. Yeah.
She's amazing, but she's covering she's almost like I wouldn't swap places with her for anyone, because she's covering the fetish, really gross, grim side of things. And we've uncovered a few news stories that we think are huge, but the papers just find them too bizarre and disgusting. They don't want to have anything to do with them, And I get that completely, but it's like, how are we going to talk about this? How are we going to talk about these problems if we can't share images of what's going on? Sorry, that's just where I am at the moment. What do you think?
What is it like with your writing, Jo? Do you find that your stories aren't so introductory anymore, that you can get more in depth? Are you finding that there's a shift in the kinds of stories you're writing as the audience grows and as awareness shifts?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the publication. So some I feel like I have to spell everything out again, or, you know, they want something a little bit formulaic about, you know, perhaps sort of emphasizing the woke angle rather than what I think actually is a feminist argument. So it depends. But yeah, I think there is a growing depth, a growing understanding that. I mean, I get quite cross sometimes when there are those sort of aren't woke people ridiculous, blah blah blah, because yes, it is funny on the one hand, it is silly on the one hand when it comes to, you know, certain things like the cat gender. I mean, for God's sake, did you hear about that university cat?
I think we talked about it last week. Yeah,
and I mean, it is kind of ripe for comedy on the one hand with those sorts of things, and privileged brats whining about pronouns. It's fucking ridiculous. But on the other hand, there is some really dark threads that are just so sort of involved. So I was chatting to Genevieve a little bit about some work that she's done around eunuchs and some sort of connections there. And obviously there was that Daily Mail article recently about a eunuch cult. And these things are sort of rumbling under the surface, but I think the level of understanding that's needed and the level of unpacking about, you know, what's going on at WPATH, what's going on at the UN, what's going on at UNAIDS it's just so dense, and it's so difficult to unpick it all. I think editors just frankly don't have the headspace, and I don't think audiences do either.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point.
Yeah,
it's really hard to get this through to people, isn't it?
It's just interesting that, like, we're probably going to have these stories being knitted together by proper journalists like yourself, Jo, over time. And all these scandals that we see playing out in plain sight every day, people are just going to get these stories and think, wait, when did this happen? Was I, you know, did I fall asleep for 20 years? When did this actually take place, you know?
I'm waiting for the 20-hour-long Ken Burns 17-part mega document, because it's just
like
big. It's just
War.
like World War II. Exactly. It's like this huge topic that's going to take Ken Burns to just go through it, you know, in hours.
I think
I
think a lot of it will be lost. To be fair, I think there will be quite a lot of political motivation to hide some of it from the future historians. But on the other hand, it's not entirely. I mean, I'm not entirely convinced that the outcome will be as we hope. I mean, I suspect it will in the end, because I have to believe that things will tend towards the rational and reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But
it
might be a long time before that happens, because I think that's one of the most incredible things to me. I've been so shocked how easy people seem to have fallen into this idea that women who actually, or people who believe that sex is immutable, have been radicalized. And this is now a sort of a constant meme that you see, and I've been really shocked at this. I've been looking around, thinking, like we've said, where are the grown-ups? And then you look and you like, where are the fucking grown-ups? How
do you see
did
more
happen?
signs, Jo? Do you see more signs of grown-ups entering rooms, like with the
definitely
and stuff? Yeah,
I was going to say, particularly within the UK, yes, I think the sort of Stonewall's reign is coming to an end, particularly with I think Henry Newman being given the boot from and I think actually, when Boris goes, which now seems inevitable, that will change things. Obviously, well, I guess it depends what we get next. But I guess globally, I'm not quite so optimistic. So really? I think in the UK, I think we probably do punch above our weight. I think we are making, we are being watched. I'm pretty certain of that. But at the same time, looking at the US and looking at international bodies like World Health Organization, like UN, like UNAIDS in particular, and all these bloody NGOs, they're sort of, it's almost like a form of cultural imperialism. They're spreading it around the world.
Oh yeah, that's how I always thought of it.
Yeah, and I think that'll make it even harder for to stop. So I think in UK, yes, we're getting there, but I think in the US, basically, I think it'll be when the cost of lawsuit starts to outweigh the profits from pharmaceutical companies.
Yes.
I wonder, you mentioned earlier sort of looking at this from a feminist lens versus looking at this from a sort of wokery lens, wokery-pokery kind of lens. I think that's a really interesting, these are two different, I see this very much as a women's rights issue, but also as an issue of the epidemic of social media exacerbating the worst traits of the left. Wokery-pokery is something I think is very serious. And I wonder if this issue isn't going to shift until the whole culture of wokeness shifts, that this is part of a bigger, machine of the left being sort of becoming a clown version of itself. What do you think?
Sorry.
Yeah,
I talk every week.
Go on, Helen. Go on.
I talk every week, man. I talk every week. No, Jo, what do you think?
I mean, obviously, some of the more conservative outlets you write for probably want to push the woke angle because they're critical of the left being clownish right now, and some of some other outlets would want to emphasize the erosion of women's rights specifically. That I think maybe conservative outlets don't necessarily have much of an interest in sometimes. Yeah. But yeah.
I mean, obviously, I'll try and shoehorn in my sort of feminist take on things regardless, because it matters to me from that point of view. I think, I guess with the left more broadly, I suppose they've attached themselves to identity politics, and identity politics is obviously a huge marketing opportunity. It's a huge way of making money for capitalists. So I suppose essentially they're on the same bloody side.
I know, that's the extra. Again, sorry to keep going back to it, but that's what this brilliant piece said. The blue block, I can't remember what it's called. The blue stack. I think Jo's been frozen, so hopefully she'll be able to come
in
back.
A delightful smile, though. I'm glad.
Delightful smile, yes. But the blue stack is basically his argument that there is a kind of it's like an agreement between Silicon Valley, the democratic government, various corporations, that certain things just can't be said, and they all kind of, agree on this and use. As I say, when they couldn't get to Rogan, they just started shooting at his friends, and now they're shooting at Trevor Noah. Noah's had to apologize, It's just insane.
Oh no!
Jo
come right back when
she'll be back. Yeah,
I was thinking of something like that would happen, but that's so it's untenable because it's destroying itself now.
But it's much easier. It's much easier to go for sort of people's friends if they're not. So it's much easier, isn't it? It's like it's the low hanging fruit, and this is what people do. And I mean, we are still, to be fair, I think is this one of the. I mean, maybe Gamergate was there, but this is one of the first big fights to happen, on the internet when we've all been on social media, etc. Is this the first massive political battle that there's been?
Well,
maybe it is.
I sometimes think that Gamergate was just a kind of warm up for this, Like I remember, if I'd known during Gamergate that a lot of the people that I was fighting alongside were people who believed that women didn't exist and that men could be women and that very extreme positions. If I'd known that, I would have taken what they said about other figures with a lot more critically. Like, for instance, I remember thinking a similar thing to the Joe Rogan thing, which is Jordan Peterson. I don't know what it is, but there's something about him. He's something, and he wasn't. He's like the most anti-authoritarian, like anti kind of, anti hard left, anti hard right, totally middle of the road,
anti-vegetables.
Was he? I didn't know that.
It's all meat. Steak only.
Oh, really?
Steak only for men.
But do you know what I mean, Helen? That's kind of going to be portrayed as that's plucked out because it adds to the picture of him as a kind of Iron John type,
Of course it does.
You know what I mean?
I mean,
but it's not true. It's not true.
Well,
he's the most. If you read his writing, it's so.
I have read his writing, and a lot of what Jordan Peterson says is actually quite interesting. I mean, he's got a different angle to that I would take, and some of what he says, I think, you're an idiot on this, but that's okay. I mean,
Yeah,
it is. You know, some people are idiots,
He's an
and
idiot.
I think it is actually quite important to think, you know, not like if you agree with somebody on something, or if you think what they have said, more
Absolutely.
importantly, if you think that what they have said is actually quite interesting or thought-provoking, doesn't mean that you are now on their side, that you
But
know.
Helen,
That's it for you.
I'm making a slightly different point, and Jo, this is where I can bring Jo back in. I'm making the point that there is that, like, I was just talking about Jordan Peterson being similar to Rogan in the sense that there is an air of, certainly on the left, certainly on left-wing Twitter, there's an air around Jordan Peterson that something is wrong there. He's somehow right-wing, he's somehow evil, and it's never backed up by anything. And I looked back as far as I could, and I discovered that the reason he was initially cancelled was purely because of his pronoun stance, his stance on compelled speech and pronouns. It's all back to that. And he said on an interview recently, since then, he's had about 55 of these storms where he has to kind of, you know what I mean? And it's because they pluck out whatever helps them build a picture that he's a right-wing ideologue when he's anything but. You know what I mean?
But of course, their left is also building him up, because a lot of people admire Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson exactly because people on the left want to cancel them and want to disappear them. You know?
Yeah.
So there's this sort of like, if you just let Jordan Peterson say things that I think are dumb a lot of the time, I don't think he's evil. I think he's a fool. You know? Joe Rogan, I think, can be foolish at times too. I don't think he's evil. If you just let them just criticize them on the grounds of they can be foolish sometimes, instead of we need to destroy this person and silence this person, then their own audience wouldn't be so passionate about them. You know, the Marvel comics, the what was it, one of the writers modeled the main supervillain in some new comic franchise after Jordan Peterson. Like, he's literally like a supervillain, you know?
That's quite funny.
It's
true. I think it's Black Panther. The Black Panther supervillain is Jordan fucking Peterson.
Brilliant. So Jo, is that what is next for you? Do you think? If there's, I don't know, if you're, I mean, I'm assuming that there's still writing to be done.
Oh God,
I mean,
yes. Yeah. I mean, what I've been working on recently. I've been away at the moment. What I've been working on is a chapter for a book that my friend Professor Kathleen Richardson is editing, and it's on porn bots. Yeah.
Something else to worry about.
I know. I do wish I could be interested in, I don't know, fluffy things like bloody handbags, or I don't know. But no, it's always the dark and twisty stuff. So there's actually quite a lot of overlap, and some of the themes that come up with sort of, essentially technology. Obsessed men creating things in their own image. It's interesting.
Yeah,
that does sound interesting. Actually, that sounds incredibly interesting. And yes, there is. I mean, I think that there is quite a massive overlap between porn and the idea of women. You see it. I mean, that new book by Grace Lavery. I mean, it's it's even got penis in the title. For God's sake. And I get slammed all of the time for being obsessed with genitals. And they literally got it in the title. I mean, I think the book is a bit of a trolling book, to be fair. I mean, I think Lavery is sort of an exhibitionist who just wants to shock. And, it's, I mean, I don't think it's at all helpful for, trans women who just want to live their lives. But, it's just a bit trolling. But genuinely, penis in the title, penis everywhere.
Well, there's a lot of trolling.
The sexual.
It is a trolling movement. It's a trolling movement. That's why I think it's to some extent. I agree with that. An extension of Gamergate. I think it's like basically Gamergate tried a full-on anti-woman, full frontal assault, whereas this is more of putting people behind enemy lines, getting them to mix with the locals and destroying it from within.
It's boundary pushing, isn't it? It's, I mean, I guess that's sort of the thing that connects trolling with it as well. It's that sort of constantly, what can we destroy next? What can we push next? it's kind of
yeah, and I think we have to really address the connection with the LGBT movement and this too, because I think gay rights is a wonderful thing. I think the gay rights movement is profoundly heroic in a million ways. And we had to emphasize that we had the right to do whatever we wanted to do in the bedroom. And that meant, in firm principle, it meant even kinks in the bedroom. But now it's being pushed into the public sphere. You know, we're trying to say it's one thing to say I'm legally allowed to do all this stuff. And now they're saying we want to push it in everyone's faces, you know? I think it's really important that organizations like Lesbian and Gay News that you write for all the time, LGBT Alliance, speak out in defense of gay and lesbian and bisexual rights and uncouple that from this idea that we're supposed to undermine principles of reality, undermine principles of material reality and women's rights, and undermine the principles of like people keeping their kinks in private, you know, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, you know, it really worries me, the backlash that we're going to face, because I know already in Poland, you know, you've got the sort of LGBT-free towns, and I do feel that that frankly people are pretty accepting, but deny reality, and they're not going to accept it. And
yes, I think that's true. I mean, yes, I mean, I think I've said before, you know, I find myself taking more and more of a hard line on things. You know, I think there was probably a time where I would have thought, well, you know, there's probably compromise to be had. Maybe trans women who have, in fact, had sort of, well, what was used to be called sex change surgery, you know, maybe women's spaces. But now my line is much harder. You know, it's
well,
like,
it has to be, because we're right in the middle of the war, aren't we? We can't negotiate a surrender while this is going on. It has to be. You know, there has to be proper discussions had about this. Isn't it fascinating, Jo, how the panic at the EHRC's decision and like letters to them, and all they said was, we should talk about it a bit more. We should define our terms. Isn't that extraordinary?
Oh yeah,
that was extraordinary.
Brilliant.
I know. Yeah, that's what I always think.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was wonderful in a way.
I think there's a bit of a delay with my connection. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, listen, we should probably wrap it up there because it is coming up to the hour. Jo, thank you again for everything you're doing. It's always a pleasure to read you. You know,
Yes,
thank you for
absolutely, and thank you so much for coming on. It's been lovely. I do hope you come on again, especially when that book has been published. I'm really interested in that porn bot thing. I'd like to know more about it.
So am I, but no, I won't do that, Jo.
Okay. Don't do that, Jo, Graham.
No, sorry. Jo, lovely to talk to you. Best of luck in you're away at the moment, but safe home, and we'll see you very soon.
Lovely to meet you.
Bye.
Oh my God. Okay, great. Excellent.
That's so interesting.
I wanted to ask her how she manages.
So much more we could have said there.
She writes and writes. I wrote one article for Lesbian and Gay News, and it like nearly killed me. And she churns them out like 2 a day. And I'm like, how does she do it? And they're so good. You do too, Graham. Yeah. You're also like an insanely prolific writer.
No, I actually don't write as much as you think. I'm often using you know, women send me things and I put in their own words. You know what I mean?
I always picture you with like butcher's paper in the typewriter. It's just going.
Yeah.
You know?
I am certainly working too much on the blog when I should be doing other things. You know, but more on that soon. But anyway, yes. So I think that's good for today. I think we've sorted out everything that needed to sort out. I don't think there'll be any more.
We've put the world to rights again.
Yes, there won't be any arguments online from now on. And I think,
that's right. The internet's been fixed, you guys.
Yeah, no more we did it. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. I never keep up with the comments because my brain will fry, so I will look back at them later. Please hit like and subscribe. We will put links after this to Excellence new channel, but also to some of the other context around what's been going on there, so people can get right up to speed. We'll see you next week. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Cheers, guys. Bye.